It is genuinely an honor to be here. It's a great honor to be in front of you. It is a tremendous honor to be serving as the Commissioner of Education. Really appreciate you guys hanging in here for the last presentation. I know that I'm the only thing now that stands between you and the start of your school year, so I do hope that you'll find these remarks very meaningful for you. I hope you found the conference very meaningful and a great spirit out there among you. It was so fun for us to be together and learn from one another. So with that in mind, I do have to thank a few people. This doesn't just happen. Anybody who's operated one of these events in the past can tell you there's an enormous amount of behind-the-scenes work that takes place. I'd specifically like to thank Robin and Robin, who are standing next to one another over there in the corner, hiding like they do. Just amazing work. I'd also like to thank all of our DESE staff who are here today. If you could please stand. I think you've done a fantastic job pulling all of this together, so please stand for us. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. And a couple of folks we don't often recognize but are so crucial to this event are our media folks. You won't see them because they're often behind the cameras or behind the curtains, but they do all of this. These are DESE staff who put all of this together for us. They put the Pioneer videos. We would be lost without them. So I thank our media guys for all that you do as well. Thank you. A couple of requests I do have from you on the housekeeping side, and that is please fill out your surveys. We really do read them. They're important to us. We want to hear. We want to make the 2 days a long time for you to be out of your schools. We have to make sure they're as productive as possible, so please make sure that you provide that feedback for us. Another important thing that you may or may not have seen yet, we do intend to move the conference back to August. It was typically that first week of August. But because of the school year starting earlier, we moved it to July. Let's protect your Julys now with the start of the school date later. Next year will be held on August the 2nd through the 4th. There is a very important survey question on there, is where should we be hosting this conference next August? So please provide your good feedback. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and start talking about, of course, as anyone might do, kicking off talking about our vision, Missouri Public Schools, the best choice, the best results. And I hope that you got a little bit out of Andy's presentation on Sunday afternoon. We have to be able to tell our stories. Why are our schools the best choice? How do we know that they are producing the best results for our children? And then, of course, our mission to guarantee the superior preparation of every child in school and in life. And we are very, very focused on two key words there. Every, you've all said it, every child, each child in our state deserves the opportunity for a superior preparation in school, but the key word here is in life. So you've heard so much about making sure that our children are prepared for their next steps in whatever it is that they choose to do when they leave our K-12 systems. Let's make sure they are prepared for life. All right, I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about our State Board of Education. You've heard a lot about them over the last couple of years, and every state sort of does this a little bit differently. Ours is specified in the Missouri Constitution, no more than 4 of either party, and they represent, or they're from each of the congressional districts. I'm going to introduce them to you right now. District 1, Mike Jones could not make it today. District 2, our Vice President, Dr. Vic Lenz, if you could stand for us again. District 3, Dr. Don Claycomb. District 4, Kim Bailey. District 5, Carol Hallquist. District 6, our president, Charlie Shields. District 7, Peter Hershend. And District 8, Mary Schrog. Now, I specifically call this out to you because they are appointed by the governor with Senate confirmation and from each of the congressional districts. But the amazing thing about the State Board of Education is once they come together, They're different than some organizations that are there to simply advocate for their district. They are appointed members who come together to serve the children in the state of Missouri. And I will not forget when Maynard Wallace made the comment that he really was, how much it meant to him when Mike Jones from St. Louis was advocating for more transportation dollars for our rural school districts. This is how they work together as a unit, coming together, thinking about what is the best for the students in the state of Missouri. Now, because we do have a number of new members, they have been very, what's the word I'm just really good about, getting out and trying to meet with you. They're very interested in wanting to know what's happening in our schools, what's happening with our leaders, what are the needs, and I appreciate the many of you who are taking your time. I appreciate the board for doing this, and the many of you who are taking your time to sit down and really have some good conversations with our board leaders. I do know that there is an event next Monday in Poplar Bluff and Tuesday in West Plains. If you don't know what I'm talking about, talk to your area supervisors. They can fill you in on that. We'd love to have your participation in those events. We have something in September in St. Louis where we're doing more outreach, getting to know our board members and helping our board members get to know them a little bit more. Now, it's always dangerous to speak on behalf of your board, but I do want to say something that I found very intriguing, and that is that so far what they've been reporting is how, first of all, how fascinated they are by all of you, by the way. But what they're reporting is, while every place they've gone is relatively unique, the needs are relatively similar. And I think that's pretty eye-opening, that some of what you're expressing in certain parts of the state, you're expressing in other parts of the state, maybe with different levels of magnitude, maybe with little nuances, but the issues are pretty much the same of what we're dealing with. And I point that out to you because when you think about the map and what you were looking at and how we are located right in the heart of our nation, I will tell you that someone came up to me at a national conference just a few weeks ago, and I got to tell you, there's a lot of enthusiasm about Missouri right now. A lot of enthusiasm. A lot of the conditions are right for moving some things well in Missouri in the terms of education. So there was a lot of excitement there, and they said, you know what, I think what our nation as a whole is experiencing right now is not necessarily a political divide, but a rural-urban divide. In Missouri, you are in prime location to help with that because while it might have room in politics, there is no room for that in education. None. And so I often talk about how we border 8 different states and we assume some of the culture of 8 different states and we're so diverse in those. But guess what? We also impact those 8 different states. There is no room for a rural-urban divide in education. These are our children, and we have to figure out ways that we serve them the best. I always try to think, how do I want to frame my remarks for something like this? Today I'm going to frame them around 2 components because someone once told me we can give our children 2 things, truth and hope. We can give our children 2 things, truth and hope, and I think we can do the same as adults. So I'm going to start out with just some of the truths that we're dealing with right now in education. First, around our students, around our teacher workforce, around shifting demographics, and around our adverse childhood experiences. We all, you've seen our mission. I've seen your mission. We all have this great goal of ensuring that every child reaches success. And I will tell you the truth. Many of our children are thriving. Many of them are thriving, and we see it every day. But the truth is, too many still are not. And I heard this from you in the halls yesterday. I heard this in our board meetings. I hear this at our staff. Too many are still not, and we cannot rest until we can stand here and say, every child, every day, every classroom, every child, we're getting it done. And so that's our first truth. The other thing I want to talk about a little bit is our teacher workforce. You heard a lot about that over the last couple of days. Our teacher workforce is at risk in both the number of teachers who are recruiting and retaining and in reputation. And Paul has done a fantastic job pulling together all sorts of stats for us. Every conference we go to, we're hearing about the stats. I'm not going to rattle them off to you today, but I'm going to talk about one stat, one survey question that has me particularly troubled. And that's the question asked of parents that says, do you want your child to be a teacher? And for the first time in history, more parents are saying they do not want their child to be a teacher than they do. That is heart-wrenching to me. A teacher who loves my profession, who remembers what it was like when I became the teacher, and even had my friends, my friends from high school saying, I think it's so cool that you're a teacher. I'm telling everybody that my friend's a teacher because that's so cool. I know that just Charlie Shields and I were talking just a couple months ago, and he looked at me and he said, you know, my mom was a teacher, with such pride in his eyes. This is I can't think of anything greater, any calling greater than educating our children. And yet, our parents are not encouraging that. That's an issue, and we understand that. That's where we are. Shifting demographics. Sarah did a great job yesterday. I was really pleased with her delivery, and we have to be really aware of the shifting demographics and what that means in our workforce, and I was very appreciative of that. But she didn't touch on a couple of things that also impact our school when we're talking about shifting demographics. And that is simply the makeup of our populations in our schools. You all know your demographics in your schools. You've probably been projecting out 10 years from now. And when I talk about the teacher workforce and the need to diversify our workforce, it's real. We are on the cusp of a major shift in the children who we are serving in our classrooms, and we need to meet that demand in our shifting demographics. And so that's one piece. The other reality is people move. People move. If you watch the state, you know in your districts, what is that looking like in 10 years from now with these shifting populations? In some places, you're seeing decline. In other places, you're bursting at the seams. It makes a difference for us in how we're thinking. The third piece, Sarah talked about it a little bit yesterday, but we're living longer. So what does that mean for you in the classroom? When our parents are living longer, and you heard somebody talk in the breakout about, in the large group discussion, we have so many of us taking care of parents, taking care of children, and there's another component to it. How are you making sure that this older generation who does not have children in our schools still values and will support public education? Because if you want to pass any of your tax levies, you've got to have that support of the generation who we are serving. So that all comes back to, how are you preparing for your back to school nights? We have multiple languages, multiple generations, who's coming to these meetings? It's not as simple as expecting the child's parents to walk through the door. Lots of grandparents, so shifting demographics is another reality. And then adverse childhood experiences. I would say that, and speaking with our board members too, that's probably the number one thing you all talk about. And we've walked through your schools, and we've seen your washers and dryers where we're washing kids' clothes, and we've seen the food pantries, and we've seen the clothing that you're handing out. The poverty is real. The trauma that this instills in our children is real. It impacts how they think. And you're all pleading every time we go out, we need more support, and we would like some more services on that issue. Now, this to me was very troubling. I'm going to show you a map that is troubling. This was the drug overdose in 1999, 15 years later. And we're not isolated. 15 years later. Now, some people, I've read research, some people think the increase in drug overdose is directly tied to the increase of child adverse behaviors. Some people will say adverse childhood experiences are causing an increase in drug use. We're not going to be able to solve that today, which was the cause, but we have to solve it. And the reality is they bring these issues into our schools with us every day. And I'm going to just tell you a quick story here. Anybody know that the Blues won the Stanley Cup? Anybody heard that? Okay. Kind of heard a lot about that. Great time for us. Great time for our state. Great time for St. Louis. Great time for the city. So I was reading it in the media. I was reading it in my electronic version. Great news. Very excited. But my eyes scanned down to the next article. 4th child in 5 days killed in violence. 16-year-old boy, 16-year-old girl, 11-year-old girl, and a 3-year-old girl running to get pizza from her dad's car was shot in a drive-by. The 6-year-old neighbor was wounded. Now, first thing I do, I always read where they go to school, because these are our kids. These are our children. And not for a minute do I want to take away from the Stanley Cup championship and what that brought to our state and what that brought to Layla, all the great things that were happening and the people in the streets without incident and all. But that was happening too. And they bring both of those events, the residual impact, into our classrooms every day. Those are our truths that we're working with. So our students, our teacher workforce, our shifting demographics, adverse childhood experiences, the hill can feel really steep. The hill can feel really steep. And I will tell you, 2 weeks ago, almost to the day, I climbed, it was a huge mountain. I'm just kidding. We were in Colorado, and we've done this hike before. That's my husband and I. And it was a really hard hike for me this time for obvious reasons. I'm not in quite the shape I'd like to be right now. So it was really hard. But I can tell you that the strategy that I realized was if I just looked down and concentrated on the step in front of me, it was not nearly as steep. Kept my head down, did the work, wasn't as steep. The other thing I realized was that it was really important. I don't really want to admit it, you don't have to tell him, but it was really important to have David with me. I don't think I would have completed that on my own. It does take a partner. It does take collaboration to get to the top. And as Major General just pointed out, we need to know where we're going, though. I mean, you just can't walk like this. You do need to know where we're going. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about where we're heading. We got the Show Me Success plan. I think you probably, hopefully, are aware that it is organized under these 3 broad categories. Access, opportunity, and equity. I hope that in everything you heard us say over the last couple of days, focused around this part. Access, opportunity, equity. Making sure our kids have access to high-quality early learning opportunities. I was so pleased to hear the governor talk about early learning opportunities and teacher salary in the same conversation, because I was at a meeting a month or 2 ago where our teacher was sharing that our teachers can't afford to send their kids to high-quality early learning opportunities. Now, that's an issue kind of on both ends, so we're going to work on that one. Access to high-quality early learning opportunities, access to great teachers in every single classroom, access to rigorous course-taking patterns. We'll be looking at the data a little bit differently, breaking it out by the demographics. Who has access? Who is participating in these career education programs that have become so exciting for all of us? Access, opportunity, and equity. And we will continue to have discussions about how to best use reading and math scores. I get that. But I will tell you, I'm standing before you today, we will not back off on this relentless need to make sure our kids can read, to make sure that our kids have the basic numeracy skills to be successful when they leave our systems. So we can talk about it differently. We can figure out how to get you your data in a more user-friendly way to help inform those decisions. But our children, we can't lose sight of our educational purpose to make sure that our kids can read. The next piece, teachers and leaders. I just talked a little bit about access. Research is so clear, right? The first thing that the greatest impact on a child in our school system is that teacher right in front of them. So when I say that we're at risk, that's a big deal for us because it is the number one impact on the success of our children in school, impact on the success of our children as the teacher, and again, of the leaders. You'll talk, we thank you. Your job is absolutely the key to this puzzle because great teachers work for great leaders. And so you'll hear us talking about the leadership development system as we continue to move on. And then, of course, efficiencies and effectiveness. We'll be working on our data systems. We'll be working on how to get you information quicker in a way that is more easily accessible to you so that you can use it to inform good decision making. But I'm going to ask you for something too. One of the things that we continue to hear about is that sometimes it's hard for you to get data to us. Let us know. But we're going to ask you that when we have a data deadline, please get it to us because sometimes it holds things up on the other side when we're trying to process. So this is sort of a two-way street on the efficiency side. It's really important that you can get us that information so that we can all use it at the state level. Also working on communication, it's a tough one. That's why we spent the last couple of days talking about communication because it's a tough one. At the local level, at the state level, information is quick. We will continue to work on that. And then you're going to hear us talk quite a bit about the continuous improvement system. And it's been really quite interesting to see. We have about 120 districts now who will be embarking on this work. But I will tell you, as in the little circle where Sarah had us breaking out into the groups, I had Jeremy Tucker behind me going, it's collaboration. I mean, it's collaboration. Of course it's collaboration. If you're going to have innovation, it's collaboration. Of course, at the end of Sarah's presentation, what does she say? It's all about collaboration. It's all about collaboration. Of course, what does the Major General say to it? It's about collaboration. It's about collaboration in all the ranks of your organization working together, and that's what the system is developed and based upon. So you'll be hearing much more about this. We'll be continuing to do our work on those bases. Now we're to hope. Told you we'd talked about truth. I want to talk about hope. Now, many, many people have told me, hope is not a strategy. Hope is not a strategy, but instilling hope in our children absolutely is. Because our children have to have hope in order to thrive. And I've been in schools where there is hope overflowing, and I've been in schools kids lack hope, and it is absolutely telling. So we must instill hope in our children, but we must have hope as leaders. We absolutely must have hope. And I can tell you, I stand before you today with so much hope. And here's why. Mr. Rogers is making a comeback. Just kidding. Now, I didn't obviously see Sarah's remarks beforehand. So when she talked about what Mr. Rogers has done to the Generation X generation, I actually was very insightful for me because I was like, I do think every one of you are special. I want you to know that. But I was like, I didn't know that was from Mr. Rogers. Okay, but here's really why I wanted to include this clip.
You know, my mother used to say, a long time ago, whenever there would be any really catastrophe that was in the movies or on the air, she would say, always look for the helpers. There will always be helpers, you know, even just on the sidelines. That's why I think that if news programs could make a conscious effort of showing rescue teams, of showing medical people, anybody who is coming into a place where there's a tragedy, to be sure that they include that. Because if you look for the helpers, you'll know that there's hope.
So what gives me hope? Start with New Madrid County R1 School District. This is a picture of their graduates. They're seeing some really great progress in their achievement in New Madrid County right now. They're one of our continuous school improvement districts. But here's the really exciting piece. when you talk to Sam or Angie, what they say is it's not about a program, it's not about curriculum, it's not about, they've just changed the way they were doing business. It's that collective efficacy of our teachers, it's the collaboration of coming together, it's the point of having a vision, it's the department's focus of trying to make the professional development more accessible for them. But I genuinely want to thank Sam, Angie, and others who are embarking on this very good work for being helpers of your students. So thank you so much. This is Shelley Parks. You saw Shelley yesterday. Shelley's our Teacher of the Year. She is a dynamite teacher. Teacher of the Year. This is also Shelley. I don't know if you can pick up that there's a very newborn baby right there on her husband's arms. 4 children. So we had a really good conversation about what it's like for our teachers to have that work-life balance and what it's like to enter back into the teacher workforce with a newborn. And there are some strategies that we can use, and she is committed to figuring out ways to help ease that transition for our teachers. And it just makes sense, guys. About 50% of our population of teachers are under the age of 40. It just makes sense. We have to figure out how to make that transition for our families easier. And I thank Shelley for being a helper in that capacity. She's willing to help the teachers that come after her. This next picture, Howard Fields is the principal at Riverview Gardens. Kendra, and I'm losing Kendra's last name here, counselor. And I should be clear here, they're no longer at Riverview Gardens because we know how the transition of our teachers and principals and all that circulates. So Howard is now at Webster Groves. Kendra is now at Pattonville, I believe. But the point of this story is, this is a great news story about what it's like to lose a child to violence. And how the people in the community, the families, the students, they come to our people and plead for some support. And these two talked about the resiliency of our children. They talked about the resiliencies of our community. But it is our staffs who are doing this great work to take care of our families. And I thank them for helping our students and our communities. Next picture, you heard a lot about this yesterday from this Pioneer videos with the St. Louis Administrative Board. So I won't spend a lot of time on what they did, but I will talk to you a little bit about their reflections the night when they handed over the task to the elected board. 12 years of staying focused on improving opportunities for children, and you might have think that they would talk about only the good points. They talked about the struggles of trying to become a board with 3 people and coming from it from different points, and they were able to do that, and I thank them for their committed service and helping the district, finding a stable superintendent and helping the district regain its accreditation and local boards. This next picture is a field of people, but there's a great vision ahead of this. This is the Columbia School District working in concert with the Department of Conservation, and it's an exciting idea here. They're going to build a nature school. Do you see this? This little nature school concept. Really excited about this. But they've worked in partnership with conservation to do this. And the part that I will tell you that I'm really excited about the opportunity that's going to provide our children to expose them to nature and what that will do for our families and all the things that will come into that. But the part that excites me is that they took it a step further and said, this can't just be about Columbia 5th graders. We want to reach every 5th grader in Boone County. And so they came together as a county initiative now, and the superintendents are working together so that every 5th grader will have access to at least a week in the nature school in mid-Missouri. So thank you, Peter, for your leadership, your partnership, and I see him hitting John. Thank you all for helping find these types of solutions. It doesn't really stop there. This is not the best picture as far as granularity goes, but I got to tell you, this was a fun day, and this was the spirit of the day. These 4 St. Charles County superintendents were coming together to show Dr. Lenz and I the CAPS project, and they said we couldn't do this on our own. Now that's St. Charles County. You know these are large pretty thriving districts right now, but they acknowledge they can't provide their kids the kinds of opportunities on their own that they can provide them together. So they came together to serve our children. And I thank you all for your leadership and for providing those types of supports for our children. Doesn't stop there. Same kind of thing. One of my first meetings back at Ed Plus, Parkway superintendent and the Rockwood superintendent, both large districts, they said, you know what, we've got a great Sparks program in this district, career ed. We have a great early college program in this district. Can we swap out our kids? Absolutely. Let's figure out ways to serve our kids and not be thinking in competition and not be thinking about just serving my kids. They're our kids. I want to thank you all for your leadership in those ways. This is right here in Osage Beach, Lake Regional Hospital. Vocational rehabilitation services are providing summer work opportunities for our children with special needs to get them the opportunity to understand what it's like to have a job, to hold a job, and to earn that first paycheck. And they did such a great job presenting to our State Board of Education that one of them almost walked out with a job offer, I think. So, I mean, what a wonderful opportunity. I want to thank Tim. I want to thank the counselor at Camdenton in this picture. I want to thank all of your school districts who are participating in this type of work to provide our kids of all walks of life and all paths of life opportunity. We've had a lot of sort of turmoil in terms of weather here lately, right? So the flooding, the tornadoes. When flooding occurs, you guys are there. Craig, Northwest, completely underwater. You guys in the Northwest region rallied together. How are we going to serve these kids? They were completely didn't have a school to attend. We're going to take care of them for the last couple of months of school. Lots of this, and every time it's happened, you all have rallied together. We haven't been exposed to it quite to the level that you have when it comes to the floods, but this is Jefferson City on May 22nd. So we weren't spared completely, and I will tell you that on May 22nd, I understand what some of you go through on those very long nights of not knowing if your staff are okay. That's a very, very long night. But what I remember from this event was that Doug Hyder called me or texted me the next morning and said, hey, I know your offices are closed, but I wanted to let you know that I checked on all of these school districts, and then he gave me a status update of all of the school districts and said, these two need you to call, if you can connect, they have calendar issues that needed to be decided for tomorrow. So I could call Roger could call the school districts. We got it all resolved within an hour. I want to thank you, Doug, for your partnership, for thinking ahead, and for helping us in that situation. And then finally, what gives us hope? It's our students. Here's a community service group in Kansas City. They raised $100,000 to give to their the vocational rehabilitation for children in their project. Great hope of what you see when you allow our children to move forward. Fort Osage, give them a problem to solve. The robotics courses are going crazy. Give them a problem to solve. They can do it. Knob Nostra students talking about the part that they made when the B-2 sought them out from Whiteman Air Force Base and said, can you help us solve this issue with our B-2? And they created the part. These kids are giving us hope. And I don't know about you all, but somebody told me that as a superintendent, if you have a bad day, you should go visit your schools, right? And the harder your day, the younger the child. So that's probably true for all of us. This is in Springfield, learning a little bit more about how funding early learning can make a difference and what hope these kids can bring to us. So I could go on and on and on and on and on, as I know you can tell, but my team said I had to cut it off, so you agree? Thanks, Peter. Okay, so all right, I'll stop. Look for the helper, and it will not be hard to find because this room is absolutely filled with them. Absolutely filled with them. Please know that we are here to support you in doing your jobs better. Please know that the enthusiasm that I felt in the halls, that I feel in this room here today, speaks volumes. We are at the school year 2019, 2020. I cannot believe we're embarking upon school year 2020. It's going to be a really good year. I have absolute hope and confidence, but only because of each of you in this room. So thank you very much. Safe travels home. Let's have a great school year. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you.